Hey, listeners, this is Peter, and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. On Easter Sunday of 1457, Vlad III of Wallachia invited several hundred members of the Saxon merchant class to a feast. They came dressed in their finest clothes. They brought their families. It was, after all, Easter, the holiest day in a Christian calendar. What happened next has been debated by historians, embellished by propagandists, and filtered through 5 centuries of legend and literary invention. What is documented is this, however: some people were impaled, some were burned alive, and some were forced to watch before their own deaths. The forest outside the city of Brasov was left filled with stakes. Vlad III of Wallachia, known to his own people as Vlad Tepes, or to history as Vlad the Impaler, had sent a message. Our history brief today covers some recent history news. A quick word from our sponsors. This day in history. On May 17th, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its landmark decision in Brown versus Board of Education, declaring racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional and transforming American civil rights. On May 17th, 1792, the New York Stock Exchange was founded under the Bretton Woods Agreement, laying the foundation for modern financial markets. Story of the day. Vlad III was born around 1428, the second son of Vlad II of Wallachia, a prince who ruled a small Christian principality caught between two overwhelming forces: the Kingdom of Hungary to the north and west, and the Ottoman Empire pressing from the south and east. His father's political survival required a perpetual, exhausting balancing act between these very powers: tribute paid to the Ottomans, alliances maintained with the Hungarians, loyalty demonstrated to whichever power currently held the upper hand. In 1442, Vlad II sent his two younger sons, Vlad, then approximately 14, and his younger brother Radu, to the Ottoman court as hostages. It was the price of continued Ottoman tolerance. The boys would spend years in Ottoman custody. Radu adopted. He converted to Islam, became a favorite of the Sultan, and spent the rest of his life in Ottoman service. Vlad, however, did not adopt well. He endured and he observed and he learned, in the most direct possible way, how power worked, how it was demonstrated, how it was feared, how compliance was extracted from populations through the systematic application of terror. He was released in 1448 when his father was assassinated by Wallachian boyars, the noble class that had always been as much a threat to Wallachian rulers as any foreign powers. He was approximately 20 years old. He had been a hostage. His father had been murdered. His elder brother, Mircea, had been buried alive by political enemies by then. He had, in other words, an education in the cruelty of power that most rulers of his era could not match. Wallachia in the mid 15th century was not a stable polity. The throne changed hands repeatedly. Vlad himself would be deposed and restored multiple times across his career. When he secured his second reign in 1456, he faced a principality riven by internal instability, threatened by the Ottomans on one border and economically dominated by the merchant communities of Transylvania on the other. The Saxons, German speaking traders who controlled much of the commerce flowing through this region, had their own interests, their own fortified cities, and their own political relationships with the Hungarian crown. They had, in Vlad's view, consistently worked against Wallachian interests, supporting rival claimants to the throne, undermining Wallachian trade, and treating Wallachia as an economic state to be exploited rather than a sovereign state to be respected. Vlad had a very specific response to people he believed had worked against him. He put them on stakes. The tension between Vlad and the Saxon communities of Transylvania had been building since his return to power in 1456. He had already conducted raids into Saxon territories, burning villages, killing residents, and impaling survivors in numbers that the Saxon chroniclers recorded with a horror that was both genuine and, it must be said, also politically useful to those who wished to portray Vlad as a monster. The Saxon accounts are the primary source for much of what we know about Vlad's atrocities. They are detailed and they are specific, and they were written by people with a direct interest in portraying their enemy in the worst possible light. And we have to remember that. Historians thus approach them with appropriate caution, not dismissing them, but reading them as documents produced in a political context that shaped what they had chose to record and how they chose to record it. What is consistent, however, across multiple sources, whether that be Saxon, Romanian, or Ottoman sources, is that Vlad used impalement as a preferred method of execution on a scale that was extraordinary, even by the brutal standards of 15th century warfare. The Eastern Massacre of 1457 was not, in that context, an aberration. It was an escalation. The specific details of what happened on Easter 1457, well, they vary across the sources. The most widely cited account describes Vlad inviting the Saxon merchants and their families to a feast at Brasov, or near it, under the pretense of celebration or negotiation. When they arrived, they were all seized. The numbers given in the sources range from several hundred to several thousand. The higher figures almost certainly inflated by the propaganda intent of its writers at the time. The method was consistent with what Vlad had done before and would do again. Those not immediately killed were impaled on wooden stakes in varying heights, a practice that could take hours or days to kill, and that Vlad is documented to have watched, occasionally while eating, according to at least the Saxon accounts. The forest of stakes outside Brasov became one of the defining images of his reign, reproduced in German woodcuts that spread across Europe, and established the visual vocabulary of a figure who would eventually, 4 centuries later, inspire one of literature's most enduring monsters. Vlad the Impaler was not a supernatural creature. He was a 15th century ruler operating in a world of genuine violence, genuine political instability, and genuine external threat. A man who had learned as a hostage child what terror could accomplish and who applied that lesson with a consistency and a scale that set him apart from his contemporaries. Now, none of this excuses him. It does not reduce the horror of a forest full of stakes on Easter Sunday, but it does make him something more historically interesting than just a cartoon villain. A man whose methods, however extreme, were understood by those around him as a form of statecraft, a deliberate communication to enemies, rivals, and subjects alike about the cost of opposition. The Ottomans, who knew something about the application of terror, reportedly turned back an invasion in 1462 when their advanced scouts encountered a forest of impaled Ottoman prisoners outside of Vlad's capital. Even Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who had taken Constantinople, reportedly withdrew. The stakes had accomplished exactly what Vlad intended. Vlad III died in battle in December of 1476, killed most likely by Ottoman or rival Wallachian forces under circumstances that the historical record has never fully clarified. He was approximately 45 years old. His head was sent to Constantinople, where it was displayed on a stake, the same fate he had visited on thousands of others. He was buried at the monastery of Snagov, on an island in a lake near Bucharest. When archaeologists excavated the presumed burial site in the 20th century, they found it empty. Where Vlad III actually rests, well, that still remains unknown. The man who spent his life putting other people on the ground left no confirmed grave of his own. The legend he left behind has proven considerably more durable than his remains. The History Brief. Today, in some history news, we're headed to Florence, where one of the city's most iconic Renaissance landmarks has once again been damaged, and this time because of a dare. According to reporting from Smithsonian Magazine, a 28-year-old tourist climbed into the famous Fountain of Neptune in the historic Piazza della Signoria and attempted to touch the statue as part of a pre wedding challenge. But what may have seemed like a quick stunt quickly turned into something far more serious. To reach the statue, the visitor climbed over a protective barrier and stepped onto the marble horses that surround Neptune's towering figure, grabbing onto decorative elements to keep her balance. Now, in the process, she caused minor but significant damage to both the horses and the fountain. Repair costs are expected to reach nearly $6,000. And this isn't just any fountain. The Fountain of Neptune, completed in the 16th century and commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici, stands as a symbol of Florence's power and artistic legacy during the Renaissance. Its central marble figure of Neptune, nearly 14 feet tall, is surrounded by mythological figures, chariots, and sea creatures, all carefully sculpted to protect authority and control over the seas. In other words, this is not just some public art. It's a cornerstone of cultural heritage of the area. Authorities quickly intervened, and the tourist now faces charges for damaging a protected cultural site. But beyond the legal consequences, the incident has sparked renewed frustration among officials and preservationists, because this is not an isolated case, as you guys can probably imagine. In recent years, Italy has seen a growing number of incidents where visitors damage historic landmarks, whether carving names into ancient walls, climbing statues for selfies, or engaging in social media challenges that treat cultural sites like props rather than artifacts. So, what happens when global tourism meets fragile history? Where Florence attracts millions of visitors each year, people drawn to its art, architecture, and legacy. But as this incident shows, the same popularity that preserves these sites can also put them at risk. Because unlike modern attractions, these works were never designed to withstand constant contact, climbing, or virtual stunts. They survived centuries of war, weather, and time. But sometimes the greatest threat isn't history itself. It's the present. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you are enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad free. Both links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel where we have different series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.